Hello, welcome back to the tutorial class. You're going back with me, and I'll be explaining to you about the second problem of today's tutorial. So for the second problem of today's tutorial, basically we are repeating what number one we already do in number one. However, there is something of a much higher level. So basically we are expected to find the variance and the portfolio standard deviation of a portfolio. I will explain it to you. Basically, there are three alternatives. I suggest you use one of those alternatives during the exam, and I will teach you the quickest alternative there is and it is much more easier for you to understand. Okay, so let's go to the Excel. Basically, for the expected return of stocks, it stays the same. It never changes. So basically, the formula is that the probability times the return. So you know the expected return of each already, stock A, stock B, stock C. And then you do the same for the variance as well, and then you do the same for standard deviation. I expect that you can calculate it correctly if you already understand problem number one. And I will explain it to you how we know which stock has the highest risk. So basically in stock market, the highest risk is seen by the standard deviation. The higher it is, the higher the value of standard deviation, the higher the risk is. So basically, stock A has the highest risk. And then we are going to calculate what you call expected return of portfolio. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit quick on here because I believe you understand problem one, and you can do the question for A and B, because for A basically a repetition of number one, and for B you are only need to know that standard deviation basically show the highest risk compared to other. Okay, so in here in problem 2, basically there's an expected return of portfolio. So in expected return of portfolio, you need to know basically the weight and also the expected return of each stock. Basically, we already know the expected return of each stock, and the weight is already given in the question here. The weight is basically 30%, 40%, and 30%. Okay, so moving on, we are going to the hard part basically. So in the hard part here, there is actually two alternatives here. It is really difficult to understand right away. So there's actually three alternatives here. The first one is basically like this. Basically, you use the variance of the portfolio and the covariance of the portfolio of between the two stocks to find the standard deviation of portfolio. As you can see, the formula is basically weights quadruple okay, times variance of A plus weight of B. It is weight of B times 2 times variance of B. You can follow the formula and then you find the covariance. For the covariance, basically you need to follow this formula, which is really long, and you need to do all three of them. And then you get the variance of the portfolio, and then you find the standard deviation, which is the root square of portfolio. And the next is another way. If you know you want to use the other formula, basically the other formula is the same, the length is the same, but you can use the correlation. So basically the difference between the first formula is that this one use correlation. It's still quite hard to understand even if you know. So for this formula, basically it's the same, you just need to follow it and it will be easy as that. However, I suggest you use the last alternative, because the last alternative I give you basically can clear problem A, B, C in a flash. Basically, it can help you like that, as easy as that. Okay. So for the third alternative, basically you just copy the information here, And then what you need to do is basically you need to find the portfolio return of from each condition. Basically, if this is condition 1, what is the expected return of portfolio? So the expected return of portfolio basically is 0.3 times minus 20, 0.4 times 30%, 0.3 minus 15. Basically, you find this all of this. So you find the portfolio return from each of the condition. After that, you can easily calculate the expected portfolio return, because basically in this case it's the same as how you calculate the expected return of each stock, right? So basically 15% times this, 20% times this, 40% times this, the same as how you calculate stock. It is much more simpler, right? For the portfolio variance, you can just follow the same formula you use to calculate the variance of the stock, which means you just need to follow this formula for the stock. But the difference is that you use the expected return of portfolio here and the return of portfolio in each condition. So basically, you will get the portfolio variance of each one of them. And then basically after you calculate the variance, the standard deviation, it is the square root. Simple, right? This formula is much more simpler. It gives the same result. The only difference with the two alternative above is that we are not using what you call the correlation of portfolio. So basically, we skip all the statistic thing to give you a much more simpler way to do this. Basically, we treat the portfolio return the same as the stock return because we know the return from each condition. I suggest you use this way, especially if you are time pressured. However, please remember that there is a condition that you need to put in the probability of its condition to find the expected return of portfolio, and there is a weight you need to know for the each condition. Okay, that's it for problem number 2. If you have any more question regarding problem number 2, you can just ask me or your class assistant. Okay. Uh, we are going to continue in problem 3 in the next video. Okay, thank you for listening.